Welcome back to the How Does She Do It podcast. I'm joined today by Vanessa Wright. Vanessa, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on, Kara.
Yeah. So, for people who don't know you yet, let's give them an introduction, girl. Tell them who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Sure. My name is Vanessa Wright. I am currently, we live in North Carolina, and I'm a certified life coach. I'm a published writer, a speaker. I'm a mom to three teens, a homeschool mom to three teens. And I just love connecting with other people and sharing stories and writing and communicating and helping mothers to create sustainable self care practices so they can get their time and energy and creativity going.
Beautiful. So, let's talk a little bit about what even led you to wanting to do all of these things. I think a lot of our listeners are very interested in coaching, speaking, writing for a path for themselves. So, let's take it back. Let's go
Yep.
back to before you were doing any of that stuff and put us on your timeline. What was happening in your life personally before you made that transition?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I will tell you it was not on my path. This was not like what I'm doing now was like 5 years ago, never crossed my mind to be coaching and doing all this stuff. I started writing about this when I had kind of gone through physical and like mental burnout for like diagnosed burnout for the second time. It was about
Wait a minute. What do
2018.
you mean diagnosed burnout?
I had worked with a practitioners who like you're looking at my numbers, looking at my blood work, my stuff like you've got burnout from like your hormone, like looking at your hormones, your cortisol
Whoa.
levels, your stress levels. I had had it really badly a couple years prior, thought I was better. And then we had a really stressful 2015 and 2016. And by the time 2018 rolled around, my body was just like kind of sending up more white flags saying, like,
Okay. I
yeah,
need
you
to
got
slow
to
down for a
slow
moment and
down.
talk a little bit about this. So this is interesting.
Mm,
So burnout for me, like, tell me what you think. It's kind of
yeah.
a buzzword that people are using quite frequently, and I think it's twofold. I think one, people are the genuine like we're burned out. People are super
Yeah.
burned out, especially women who have families or they're caregivers or they're married and they have businesses or careers. Yeah, 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 for sure. But I also
Mhm.
think you're bringing an interesting perspective to the idea that burnout can also be like medical and physical.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when you say you went and got diagnosed and you saw practitioners, the listener that's
Mhm.
like, maybe I need to do that, talk us through who you worked with to find this out.
Yeah, well, it was all like holistic and sort of naturopathic doctor type things. It was a couple of different people. The first time it happened, oh gosh, was it like 2012, 2013? So it's been a while. And it was I believe like saliva tests, blood work tests, right, that showed like my cortisol levels. And my person I was working with at the time showed it to one of the like leading adrenal fatigue specialists in the country. And he said, I don't know how your client's like standing up straight. Like, how is she functioning? Because her
Wow.
numbers are horrible. And I was like, oh my gosh. Had I known at the time that my body was doing the very, very best it could just to like stay functioning and stay, taking care of three little kids, homeschooling, dealing with two of my kids had health issues, like I would have been a lot more gentle with myself.
Let,
But,
let's let's
you,
talk about that.
yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that moment in your life.
Mm,
Uh okay, so you got this burnout. The practitioners who you're working with are like, "Woman, how are you surviving?" Set
mhm.
up the scenario of your life. Were you married? What was the status of that? How many kids? What age were they?
Yeah, so this was, gosh, well, I got married in 2001. We had our first child in 2005, and then 22 months later, we had twins, boy girl twins. So, so
I'm
to,
hyperventilating for you, girl.
and
Oh my
without going
gosh.
into like too much for privacy, personal reasons, like having the kid, it was not easy. So like there was a lot of stuff that I had to go through to even like have kids and like get
Sure.
them like born on this planet.
Uh-huh.
So my
So you
body
just
had already
you had a challenging time either getting
everything,
pregnant or staying pregnant.
all of it, all of it.
So it was
So
already super stressful
yes,
for
right.
several years.
Right, and
Okay.
then, like, you're got 3 babies basically, right? And, you go into survival mode, right? You are
Mhm.
in survival mode, but, like, nobody tells you, like, "Oh, by the way, like, your thyroid's gonna tank, your this is gonna ta," like, you're not sleeping for years, like, I
Yeah.
I didn't know any of this, like, I didn't know. I just
Yeah.
was like, "Wow, I'm a hot mess and just trying to do the best I can, which is what most of us are doing as moms.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
no, for sure.
yeah,
I think I shared with you, I have 2 kids under 2 right now.
yeah.
So, and my kids are 14 months apart. Thank God I
Mhm.
didn't have twins a second time, but I gotta tell you, I keep having this recurring dream that I'm gonna have 2 more babies. And then, like, in the dream, they're, like, super close together, and I
Ooh.
don't know what that's about. That's my hands are, like, getting sweaty thinking about it. Okay. Okay, so you had 3 kids within really,
Mhm.
like you're
Less
pregnant
than
for,
2
like, 3
years.
years, okay?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
pregnant, postpartum, having kids, 3 years.
yeah.
Obviously, this is taking a toll on you physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um, you're married, so that's, something that you guys are learning to be
yeah,
parents.
yeah.
What are you doing? Are you being a stay-at-home
I was stay at
mom?
home. So I left. So I had been in marketing communications for like 6 or 7 years, full time, before I had kids, was able to work from home as a contractor through both my pregnancies and just take time off in between. But when the twins arrived, I completely resigned from my contractor work there and just said, I'm done doing this for a while. So became full-time stay-at-home mom. Um, and then when the twins were about 3 months old, I started fainting and just like passing out. And obviously that's not normal. And I was kind of taken to this doctor, that doctor, told one thing, told another, and nobody could really tell me why this was happening, right? Like, because you just can't faint, right? You just can't just pass out. So I wasn't able to drive. I couldn't always be alone with my kids because we didn't know what was going on. So it was highly, highly stressful. So all that to say, that had been going on like in 2007, 2008, 2009. And then, things got a little bit better. I started changing my diet. I started working with practitioners. But then again, like in 2011, 2012, the burnout, I think it builds, right? Depending on also like all of our bodies are very different, right? Like what works for you does not work for me. My body's different than your, all that
Yeah, it's
stuff.
like
And
it's
so,
research shows that's actually
yeah,
true in terms of
yeah,
anything. Medicine you're
right,
taking, diet that you're taking,
right.
all of those things
All of
show
that
that.
stuff.
Mhm,
Yeah.
okay.
And
So
so it
you've
was,
got
yeah.
so started like 2000 when is 2005 you
That's when I had my first
had your
son,
first.
right?
So we're up to
Yeah.
at this point, you're like 6, 7 years later dealing with
Mhm.
the symptoms and the complexities.
Yeah.
Um, and take us to that moment when you get this realization that this is the problem I need to solve. What did
Yeah.
you learn and how did you learn that?
Yeah, so I'm a huge lifelong learner. Like I don't I partially like to be in control, but also like I want to know what is going on with my body. I don't ever take I had very bad experiences with traditional doctors, I will tell you. So like I was always questioning like, well, where are you getting this information? Like, why are you telling me this? Because like everything in my body and my intuition is saying this is not right. And
Yeah.
so I really had to become an advocate for myself. I would research, the crap out of everything until I found people to work with who would finally acknowledge and say, yes, there's something like that. You're not crazy. You're not making this up. And so I was very fortunate that we lived in an area at the time that had a plethora of alternative solutions. I read about it and I wanted to take ownership of what I could control when my body felt out of control.
Yeah.
So that was sort of like, if I look back on it now, I see like where the seeds were planted of like where I am standing today at 49. This was in my mid 30s, early to mid 30s. And yeah, it was just a lot of appointments and trying things, a lot of trial and error. I will tell you,
Yeah.
like I still never found like the one. There's no magic bullet. There's no magic bullet,
Yep.
right?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. So you spent 7 years really struggling with very challenging personal life circumstances. You stepped out of the workforce. Thank goodness you were able to do that so you could deal with this. You get a solution. You advocate for yourself. You get on track. And now you have some epiphany. What happened that was like,
yeah.
oh, I should now help other people?
Yeah, so I will never forget it. It was 2018. I was working with a coach. Side note, I've had a coach in some form since 2009. I'm a huge advocate like of not doing things by yourself. So she
Agreed.
asked me, she said, "Well, how are you flowing? How are your days flowing?" And I said, "There is nothing flowing. Like I am not flowing. I am like splayed out on the riverbank. Like I can't, like I'm just laid out on the side, like I'm not swimming, nothing's going well. I feel just tapped out."
Hmm.
And so I sat with that word flow. Then like the next day I was journaling and I came up with like a little self-care acronym for myself. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try this for myself. And I can share what that is in a minute. But I was like, I needed a little structure, but I needed flow within a structure for my self-care because I said, I'm responsible for taking care of myself. I'm responsible for my care at the end
Mhm.
of the day. I can, the doctors can this, the coach can this, that stuff, but I can take their stuff, but I have to do the things to make myself physically feel better so that I can get up. And I'd been homeschooling my kids for 8 years at that point. So like
Ooh.
homeschooling, I was working from home. So I had to turn things around or else things were just going to kind of go down the tank again.
When you had that moment, of epiphany and realizing, "I'm not in flow, I need structure, my life is full and big, I have to do something." Was there some indication for you that this was an aha moment? Was it a feeling? Was it a memory, a visual, a sensation? How did you find that epiphany?
Um, I love to journal. So like for me, I was like, I've been writing since I knew I had hands. That's what I always tell people. Like I have stacks and books and just of journaling. And when I wrote it down, there was just this, and I have the original writing of it. Like I have my original journal page still. I just felt this like, oh, oh, okay, I can do this. And so when I wrote down the flow and then I started sharing it on Instagram back when you could just share pictures, people would see
What
it,
is
right?
that?
Right. And I was like, they were like, oh, people were like, oh my gosh, wow, this makes sense. Like, oh, I would love to. How are you doing this? And so I just started sharing about it. This was like in 2018, and
Mhm.
it just kind of snowballed from there. Talking a really I would go to homeschool conferences and speak about like self-care for a home, for homeschool moms, because that's like the one way ticket to not take care of yourself is to just throw yourself into only, homeschooling your kids, talking about homeschool, that like just my whole life had become that. And I was like, nope, I need to come back to myself here. And I'm a human, I'm a creative soul. How do I get back to myself?
Yeah. What does self-care mean to you?
Self-care to me means joy. It means keeping things sustainable and doable so that, and I don't want to say so you can fill your cup up so that you can help others. It just has to be just so you can be joyous in your own life, right? Like that's just what it is, right? And so that's where I came into this finding flow, and I love it and I'm obsessed with it. I'll
This
talk about it.
When you say
Yeah.
flow, I immediately
Hmm.
think of, the author of the book Flow,
Hmm.
and I really should learn how to pronounce his name, Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. I don't
Yes.
know how to pronounce it.
I don't either.
I should do him the honor. Somebody shamed me once because I said his name like Mihaly like that, and they shamed me. They were like, "You should learn this man's name. Like, he deserves that honor and respect." And I should. Okay, I admit it. I haven't learned it yet. God's still working on me. But I think of the book Flow, where he's doing the research and, I so for example, I have a quote on the back of my I'm in a closet. This is my closet office, right? In my closet here, the best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits and a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile.
Mm.
This is what comes to mind for me when you're talking about flow. Is there a connection between the research of flow and your framework?
Actually, no. So it's funny because I wrote this without before I even knew about that book or anything. And so
Mhm.
what I define as flow is F is to feed your body, mind, and spirit. L is to love yourself and lean into your season of life. O is to own your time and space. And W is to weed out anything that's not working so you can welcome something new. And so that's what I created my flow to be
Well,
like.
let's talk about your flow. So,
Yeah.
the thing that comes to mind for me immediately as a coach of coaches and a framework person myself is like, cool, that sounds great. I love it. Brandability, wow, chef's kiss. Okay. You've got that. It's really good. But like, first of all, how did this actually help you? Like, you were dealing
Hmm.
with burnout, you were dealing with three kids, a set of twins. I'm sure there was like other physical things you had to deal with. You also have a husband, you're homeschooling them. And then now you're doing all of this like personal growth and development work. Like, did
Hmm.
it really help? And if so, how?
Yeah, so this is what I started on. I'm like, okay, so if I write down my own F, and I will tell you, like, I just do these seasonally. So I work in seasons, right? Like my winter flow is different than my spring flow, is different than fall because I work seasonally. Another key thing when I wrote this is that I was kind of halfway through perimenopause. So
Mm.
my cycles were changing. So I couldn't rely on monthly cycles anymore because mine were not coming every month like they had been for like a bazillion years it felt like. So
Yeah.
that's so I needed something to work rhythmically, seasonally. I started kind of getting more in tune with that. And so it looked like, okay, well, what am I feeding my mind? What am I feeding my body? What am I feeding my soul, for winter? And just focusing on that, not 600 other things, right? I
Okay.
and
So
so
yeah,
work,
yep,
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have like too many questions popping up, but
Yeah.
answer the question about how did it help you? Like, give us a story from like a specific
Mhm.
season or a specific
Sure.
moment that you were dealing with something that I think a lot of our listeners might deal with, whether it's burnout, the challenges of balancing being
Yeah.
a mom and also wanting to do entrepreneurial endeavors.
Right.
And give us like a big takeaway for you in the framework.
Yeah, so I will. So about in 2020, so fast forward. So I've been talking about flow for like 2 years, just talking about it. I'm not coaching it. I'm not doing anything, just talking about it. So in 2020, I said, okay, well, I think I want to get serious. Like my coach said to me, she's like, I think you really need to coach. She's like, I'm watching you on social media. I see how you're connecting with that. You have this natural gift, and I think you need to do this. So she like gently twisted my arm, and I said, okay, well, I was 45 at the time, and I said, all right, well, I'm going to plant that seed now. I'm going to do this now. I'm going to focus in on this season of life now because I don't want to wait for my kids to graduate high school and then start when I'm
Mm,
50. I don't want to start then. I need to plant some things now. So what did that look like from my flow standpoint was feeding my mind, body, and spirit was like making sure I was physically taking care of myself, which was whatever foods would sustain me, reading about coaching, getting to know other coaches, right? Listening to podcasts, that kind of stuff. Loving myself enough, the L was that I'm going to do this for myself. I've homeschooled my kids. I've given them this educational buffet and like really tailored and curated their education. I want that for me now. And so I said, okay, well, how can I do that? Still leaning into my season of life in 2020, where, we had been in lockdown. I have 3 teenagers. Like, they're still homeschooling.
yeah.
What does that mean to do that? Like, I couldn't just quit everything and become a coach. I had to start doing things
This is
slowly.
important. This is
Yeah.
important, right? Because I want to pause here and dial in on the importance of that. I think as moms, especially or caregivers in general, we do a lot for others that we don't do for ourselves. I'll admit it. I thought about it this morning. My daughter, we try to give her foods that we think are really going to nourish her and that are good for her body. So she eats a lot of like fresh organic berries and vegetables and healthy grains. And I like don't eat, or I'll throw like a piece of turkey sausage in the microwave and be like, good enough. And
Yeah.
I'm like, there's literally fresh
Mhm.
strawberries that she didn't eat. Why am I not putting them in my mouth? So I think this is a key point is sort of turning around to yourself and saying, you do all this. How can you do it for yourself without burning the ship? A paradigm, some people will say, this is how you succeed in life. Burn the ship and go all in. Well, that doesn't really work when you have 3 kids that you're homeschooling and a husband, right?
Yeah, and I said I work from home for a company that I love and adore, and so I was doing that too.
Oh, so you were
So,
so at this
like,
point, you were actually working again?
oh, I started working from home in 2017, and
Okay,
so
okay.
homeschooling, working from home, and all this other stuff, but it was, like, in 2020 when I kinda had this aha of, like, "This is what I wanna do, this coaching thing." So, I'm going into my F, I'm going to my L, I'm owning my time and space,
Yeah.
which is, again, focusing on carving out for us, it looked like, what is homeschool time? What is my work time?
Mm,
I'm shuttling kids to, like, back and forth to places. What does that realistically look like? And then making sure I'm taking time and what has to get weeded out. So in 2020, I had to
big.
weed out some big things so that I could make space, knowing I was going to start my coaching program in
Yeah. So
2021.
what was the big thing you took out?
The biggest thing was I had been not a co-owner, but there were 3 homeschool moms, 3 of us, and we had started a local homeschool conference. We did it for 2 years, and then I had to step away. I just said, "Look, this isn't fitting in with what I want to kind of do down the
Yeah.
line. So, and it was really
This is
hard because like
big.
two good friends, and
Yeah.
I had been in the homeschool community. I was a homeschool blogger on one of the most popular homeschool blogs for 4 years, and I was still doing that at the time, but I just didn't have the energy to keep doing online conferences or in-person conferences.
This is a
I
really
had to,
good this
yeah.
is the key point. I find that, sometimes high performing and high achieving women, we like to take on a lot because we're addicted to the chaos of doing it. Like, we love the do it all type of feeling.
Yeah.
But as you clearly know from your journey, that can lead to burnout and, like, actual physical problems that can lead to other issues. So, the idea of weeding stuff out, I think that's a challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Is
It's
there a
my favorite.
way that is there a way that you decide what needs to get weeded out?
Yeah. So for me, it looked like, well, something has to give, and right. And if I want to plant this garden, if I want to sort of plant a garden of coaching, and I wanted to become a published author, like in January 2021, I sat and did my goals for the year, and I said, and it just came to me, it was like become a published author, and I was like, well, that's weird. Where did that come from, right? And then 2 weeks later, I got an email, or I'm sorry, I saw an Instagram post, a call for writers for a publisher in Australia who I had met online through coaching stuff. I submitted my proposal based on flow, my flow method. And 3 days later, I get an email saying, "Oh my gosh, we would love to have you in our book." Well, what?
So that's interesting. It's kind of like the lesson you hear is when you're weeding something out, when you say no to something that isn't fitting, I'm guessing that you tell me, but what I'm looking for is like, what's the framework to know what to weed out to get
Mm,
to that new seed? Like, how do you
yeah.
know what needs to go?
I don't think you always do. That's the thing.
Mm,
So like you don't always, but if you know that if something is not bringing you joy, if it's feeling like what's the word I'm looking for, like if your body's just like, oh, like it's more of like a feeling like I really don't want to do this, but I feel like you have to do it, like that maybe needs to get pulled out of the ground,
mhm.
because it can come back. The thing is, weeds will grow back, and some things will come back to you if they're really meant for you. And I've really had to learn that. But you just have to like pull it out, declutter, whatever metaphor or analogy you want to use, because you need space. Your heart needs space, your brain needs space to
Yeah.
like have this energy come in that
Freedom
you
to
may not
call in something.
expect.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
So the weeding out process, you go through it, you get a call about this very thing. So now you write the book, you publish it, you're a published author. Where are you now in terms of your coaching journey? Are you still working as well?
Yeah, yeah, I do. So you mean currently like today?
Oh,
Or
well,
just like
actually,
then? Oh yeah,
both.
so back then? Yeah, so in 2021, I started my coaching program. It was like a 6 or 9 month program. I was published in this collection of women's essays. My chapter was called Intuitively Grow Your Fearless Flow. It was all about flow, and I was published with other amazing women writers. And then I started pro bono coaching at the end of 2021, and then things have just taken off. And I've slowly been working on my coaching business, slowly been writing, because I just graduated my oldest teen this past June. I still have kids at home. I mean, I don't homeschool them myself, but like I got to make sure they're signed up for classes. They don't, so I still drive
Well,
them
there's still
places.
management. There's still things to do. Yeah.
There's
Right.
right. My oldest just moved out. Like I went through menopause this summer. So that was an entire situation. That's a whole other
Yeah. That's a
conversation,
whole
but
other
like
podcast
a whole other
episode.
podcast episode. So like there's a lot going on, but the thing is that with the flow is like I keep flowing, right? Like
Yep.
and it shifts and changes, but there's always this little gentle structure
Beautiful.
that I have to
Hmm.
keep myself moving forward. And then I've been able to do that with clients, with just standing, going and speaking at local
Yeah.
programs or whatever. And it just gives people a little bit of, oh, I can do that. Like everyone I've ever said that, like, oh, okay, this makes sense. I can do that. You're
Yeah.
not telling me to give up everything and just to go to the spa. I'm like, I can't afford to, I don't go to spas. I can't afford to go to a spa. Like all these other things. Like this has to be realistic. Like you have to build these tiny habits
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
right?
I love
Yeah.
it. So one of the things I love about frameworks and habit building, like I'm a huge fan of James Clear in the book Atomic Habits.
Mm,
I really function well in that framework, but I really functioned well in that framework when I was a single woman and I didn't have a
hmm.
husband and any kids. When you get some sort of complexities in your life of the things that you want, right? Really, as you get more of the things that you want in life, then the complexity increases and those cut and dry rules, they need flexibility. It sounds like you
Yeah.
found that with your framework. So that's great. I love that. I want to talk a little bit now about um what's really next for you. And I'm looking for, the next thing that you're looking towards. It's gonna really light you up. Like, what does that look like for you, Vanessa?
Oh, wow, that's a that's a big question. Um, I think I'm still settling into how I want to help people and what that looks like from a business standpoint. One of my coaches that I work with, right? It's like your business is not a hobby. So like, how do we how do we make our business not a hobby, but also like I still love I still have my amazing job that I have, and I love being on a team. That's one of my values. So like that team is that's important to me to show up and do that work every day. My creativity, my creative self. Um, and so I'm just giving myself this year. I thought this year was going to be like a very high energy, like go for it year. But the more I'm journaling, the more I'm sitting with myself. I think this is going to be more of a underground like planting season for me for
Yeah.
this year,
Okay.
and a little bit because 2023 was very a lot. So
Yeah.
I think I need a breather, a little bit of a breather for this year. Yeah.
Interesting. Uh, okay. So planting seeds, looking towards the vision for the future. Um, so here's the question that I have. I see where you're going. I'm seeing where you want to go. Would it be okay with you if I help elevate you into that moment?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So in that case, it's time for matter of fact. Okay. So matter of fact is a segment I like to do on the show where I ask amazing guests like you to really step into their moment of truth. And let me explain what I mean by that. This is your own personal spotlight. It's a totally safe space that's about empowering you to brag a little or a lot. Okay. And I get it. It's really not always easy for us to toot our own horn. I think it's the way we're raised. There's also a biblical principle that tells us not to brag about ourselves. But instead of thinking about it that way, what I'm asking you to do is allow us to celebrate you. Allow me to celebrate you.
Mm,
So, right here, right now, it's okay. And it's not just about what you've done and that it's actually because I need you to show and let the listener know that this is possible for them too. Okay. So
mhm.
here's what I want the hard numbers. I want shiny awards. I want those big milestones that pop up for you. I want you to put those out for us to hear. And I have three rules.
Okay.
One, no disclaimers, which is another way of saying no story. Just say, I did this and I'm proud of it. And no shame. And the third is your kids and your family don't count because I already know that they're your greatest accomplishment. So you can't talk about them. Okay. And in full disclosure, this is something that I do even with my like crazy successful clients who have won Tonys, Grammys, right? Oscar nominees, Super Bowl winners. Like this is an exercise I do with them that's just meant to give you that thing for you. So without further ado, Vanessa, the stage is yours.
Wow. Number one, no, I love this because I think celebrating is, sorry, so important. My biggest thing from last year that's sticking out is I wanted to support 10 midlife mothers last year. That was my goal. And I honestly wasn't sure how that was going to happen, especially because halfway through the year, I took 3 months off social media and I said, I'm done. I'm so burned. I was so exhausted. Um, Took a rest, came back. And by the end of the year, I had actually supported 15 clients in some
Wow.
sort of capacity, which felt amazing. And that just was like wow, because my biggest goal is like if I can get up in the morning and one person sees something I've written or I've said and it can help them, I truly mean this, like that's my biggest joy is
Yeah.
helping other moms feel like they're not alone and they're not, nothing's wrong with them.
Good. Now, let's dive in more. I want to keep the spotlight on you a little bit more. Talk about some of those key wins that you helped these 15 individuals manifest or accomplish, solve, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, so my one client she's been with me from the very beginning, started as a pro bono client and has stayed on and done one-on-one group coaching, everything, right? She had this amazing thing where she ended up launching her own business out of something she's loved doing for 20 years, which I knew she had it in her. And we would talk around it for like 2 years. And then
So
she finally,
you helped her
yeah.
launch a business.
Well, she did like it was like I held space for her for 2.5
Well,
years
right.
while she went back and forth and did this. And then when she finally came to me and she said, "I'm gonna do this," and I was like, "Yes," because
So this is, I want to pause for a moment because this is a perfect example of a moment that you get to elevate yourself based upon what you've already done. As a
mm,
coach, you don't do anything for people. You don't make people. You're not like a puppet in somebody's hand going da 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 da
right.
da da da. No, you hold space for them, you lead them, you counsel them, you mentor them, right? And as a coach, especially as somebody that's really looking to build that, you get to own that result, not because it's yours, but because you helped create the space to lead somebody to doing something they never thought that they could do, right?
Yeah. And it
So,
felt I was so proud of her. Yeah.
exactly. So, I want to put the spotlight on you one more time for you to tell us about that amazing thing that you did. Once again, Vanessa, tell us about the results you gave this client.
Yes. So she, when we first started, she knew she wanted to do something beyond, not beyond, but like she has 4 kids, homeschooling. She was doing a little bit of work here, but she just kept feeling something was missing, and she was wanting to do something to bring in extra income for her family, like most of us these days have to do, right? It's not like we just want to do. It's like we're a necessity to keep living in our society, right? And so for 2 years we went back and forth going around and around trying different things, and then we finally came to the space where she was able to launch some online classes and her own website and doing things that she's passionate about and has the wisdom and skills with for 20 years, and she brought it into her own space to then teach others how to do things. And I don't want to, for privacy reasons, I'm not going to say a little bit general, but
Congratulations.
yeah.
There's nothing more rewarding as a coach or and a leader than helping people achieve the things that they have set out to do
Mhm.
while you're honored and blessed enough to be in their world, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I love
It
it.
was
Is there
I cried. I cried when she was telling me. I was just, like, crying because I was like, I saw that for her and but, they have to see it for
Yep.
themselves, right? Yeah.
And I'm gonna give you one last chance while you're on the stage, spotlight is on you, right? What else is something that you've accomplished? You could talk about where you've gone to school, you could talk about anything, a certain amount of money that you made, that you have invested, anything that comes up, darling. What else?
Um, I think the biggest thing was giving myself space and grace to tap back into my creativity and my creative energy. And what I mean by that is I love writing, I love poetry, and I love just there's like this just different side of me that's not related to coaching, but it's sharing like vulnerable words and poetry and all that stuff. And so I did submit something that's going to be published in a mother's collection of poetry in March, I believe. And so I actually forgot, and I had forgotten about it
Okay, good.
until the
Look,
other
all right,
day.
pause, no disclaimer. Woo, girl, okay. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
And let's sum it up in a statement. All right, I'm handing you the microphone and I want you to tell us exactly what you have accomplished.
I have accomplished with sorry, can we stop? Yeah,
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 I just
we'll
want you to
edit.
say, I want to hear you say, I am published. I have been published twice. I want to hear you say it in your voice. I want you to own it.
Okay. Oh, it's hard to do. I do this for other people, but
You
it's hard for
I know,
myself.
I know it's hard to do. That's literally why I do this segment because it's hard even for successful, high
Yeah.
achieving women to do, and that's literally the point. This is why I
Mhm.
say this elevates you. This elevates you, it elevates me, it elevates the listeners, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give it to you. Vanessa, here's the mic.
I'm really proud of growing my coaching business the last 2.5 years and becoming a published author and stepping into, as I said, my role as creative energy officer. That's where I am. And heading towards 50. I'm ascending towards 50. So I'm really loving this age and stage of life.
Beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much. That was truly beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and understanding that everybody that's listening is listening to hear themselves in you. And it's so hard for us to inspire others when we don't take the time to say, this is what I did. This is what I'm proud of. So beautiful. And thank you. So, okay, here's the next thing. For the listener that's like, listen, I need to know Vanessa. I need flow in my life. How can they find you and connect?
Sure. I'm in two places. I'm on Instagram at Vanessa N. Wright, and my website is vanessaNwright.com. I keep it simple and two places. That's all my, as I said, that's all my 49-year-old brain can handle right now. And I want to be, that's where you can find me. And I love showing up there and connecting with people.
Okay, good. And who would you just love to hear from right now?
Ooh, like a person alive, or what do you mean, like, or it's
Well,
like,
now I have a
yeah.
follow-up question. I mean, who's the listener that you would love to connect with you, right? Describe them a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah, sure. I typically work with moms in midlife, 35 and up, and it's somebody who is ready, who is wants to make changes, isn't
Mm,
thinking about it, but you are ready to come in and do it now and not wait. That's where I'm looking for those people who are ready to do it and are motivated to make some changes so that they can lean into their energy, their creativity, and just everything that comes with this age and stage of midlife motherhood.
beautiful. Women that are wanting to start businesses, start a new path, anything else?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I like, and who I like in this time too, a lot of transitions and transformations as midlife moms, right? You maybe have kids who are flying the coop. You may be going back into the workforce, but you don't know what that looks like. You may not know who you are anymore because you've spent the last 20 years only not only like just doing everything for everybody else.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of work with people who like don't even know what brings them joy anymore. And so I love to kind of like peel back those layers and get people back into feeling their joy, who they are as human beings, right? Not just these labels of mom or coworker or wife or that, like who are you at your core?
Mm, amazing. Well, my final question for you is, look, you have 3 kids, a set of twins, close together. You've got a husband, you've had a job, you've had a career. You've overcome huge obstacles in terms of burnout, in terms of physical health, and also raising a family, and then starting a business as a published author and a speaker. How do you do it?
I do it using I do it using flow, and I do it using my own just pure joy that I seek every day and wanting to help other mothers, because I always say like I don't want moms to like just feel burned out and to feel like they've nothing to offer, and that their lives are just like very ho hum or mundane or whatever. So like that's what lights me up. It's like getting up in the morning and getting an email or getting a DM or getting a smile from somebody that says, wow, this really lit me up today and thanks for helping me. That's like all I need.
I
So
love
that's
it.
what, yeah.
Bringing joy back to mothers and bringing that
Yeah.
into their lives to be the guide for where they're
Yeah.
going to go next. Whoo,
Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for being on the show. It was incredible. And I can't wait to hear who's inspired by your story so they can get back into flow and find the joy in their lives.
Thanks for having me, Kara. It was a great conversation.